He showed up at his own front door in jeans and a coffee mug and watched his parents demand he hand his house over to the man who had been sleeping with his wife. He didn't yell. He didn't cry. He pressed record. And then he waited. I want you to sit with that for a second. Because what I'm about to tell you isn't a story about revenge. It's a story about what happens when a family spends 20 years treating the wrong son like he's disposable, and the day that son finally decided to agree with them. I came across this confession on a private forum, written by a man named Douglas, 63 years old, retired electrician, Houston, Texas. He posted it at 2 in the morning. He said he didn't know why he was writing it, that he just needed somewhere to put the truth where he couldn't take it back. I read it 3 times before I could figure out how to talk about it. Not because it was hard to understand, because it was too easy to understand. Because I think a lot of us have been on one side of this story or the other, and most of us are afraid to admit which side. This is about Marcus, his oldest boy. 33 now, structural engineer, built his career from scratch on a concrete foundation his parents never helped him pour. And Douglas and his wife Linda didn't just fail Marcus. They failed him methodically, quietly, with a smile on their faces, telling themselves the whole time that they were keeping the family together. They were wrong about everything. Marcus was 19 when it started. His younger brother, Derek, had gotten his girlfriend pregnant. They needed room. The family home had 3 bedrooms. Marcus had the largest one, not because he demanded it, but because he was the oldest and had been there longest. Douglas sat both boys down one Sunday after church. He remembers the Houston summer through the living room window, the oak tree in the yard, the way Linda kept folding the same dish towel over and over in the kitchen doorway. He looked at Marcus, and he told him he needed to find somewhere else to stay. Just for a while. Just until Derek got settled. Marcus didn't fight it. That was always the thing about Marcus he never fought. He asked one question. Where am I supposed to go? Douglas told him he'd figure it out. Said he was resourceful. Said it like it was a compliment. I want to stop here for a second and just say, if you have ever been the one in your family who was told you were strong enough to handle it, you already know what that phrase really means. It means, we are going to need you to carry this so we don't have to. It means, your stability is convenient for us right now. It means, we love you, but not as loudly as we love the one who keeps making noise. Marcus packed his room in 2 trips, stayed on a friend's couch in the 3rd ward, then another friend's apartment near Hobby Airport. Worked construction in the mornings, enrolled at Houston Community College at night. He didn't call home asking for money, didn't show up at holidays guilt-tripping anyone. He just built, slowly, stubbornly, brick by brick. He transferred to the University of Houston after 2 years, graduated with honors, got a job with a civil engineering firm downtown, got a second job, paid off his car, got his own apartment in Midtown, built a whole life. And Douglas and Linda barely noticed. They were busy with Derek. Derek's baby, then Derek's second kid, then his 3rd and 4th. Derek bouncing between landscaping jobs and warehouse gigs. Derek and his wife Maya always needing a little extra help with rent, a little extra babysitting, a little extra patience. Douglas and Linda gave it all. Every weekend at Derek's place, every holiday organized around Derek's schedule. Groceries dropped off when money was tight. Linda practically lived at Derek's apartment some weeks, bathing the grandkids, cooking, keeping the whole operation from collapsing. Marcus stopped calling around year 3, stopped showing up for Thanksgiving around year 5. They'd see him maybe once a year at a cousin's graduation or a family funeral, polite, well-dressed, slightly distant. Douglas told himself Marcus was just busy, that he had moved on, that he understood. He did not understand. He had just stopped expecting anything different. Here is where the story splits into 2 timelines, and you need to know both of them to understand what happened next. Timeline 1. Marcus worked his way into a senior position at his firm, saved aggressively, and bought a house in a quiet neighborhood in Pearland, 4 bedrooms, 2-car garage, good school district. He was 32. He had done it completely alone. Timeline 2. 3 months before Marcus closed on that house, Linda was over at Derek's apartment helping with the kids when Derek's phone buzzed on the kitchen counter. She glanced at it out of habit. The preview read, "Last night was everything. I keep thinking about you." The contact name was Simone. Simone was Marcus's wife. Linda's stomach dropped through the floor. She confronted Derek when he walked out of the bathroom. He went pale, tried to laugh it off, then crumbled. Yes, he admitted. He and Simone had been sleeping together for nearly 7 months. It started at a family gathering where Simone had come over to help Maya with the babies. Marcus was always working late. Simone felt lonely. It just happened, Derek said, like affairs or weather. Linda called Douglas immediately. They drove to Derek's and sat him down. Douglas told him to end it that day. Derek cried, swore it was already over, begged them not to tell Marcus, said it would destroy him for no reason since it was done. They chose to believe him. I have thought about this moment more than any other moment in this story, because this is the fork in the road. This is where Douglas and Linda could have been the parents Marcus needed them to be. Not because telling the truth would have been easy, it would have been brutal, but because Marcus deserved to know. Because his marriage, his home, his life were being built on a lie his own parents were actively protecting. They chose Derek's comfort over Marcus's reality. They told themselves it was mercy, it was cowardice. 4 months later, Marcus closed on the house in Pearland. Word got back to Douglas and Linda through a cousin who'd seen photos on Instagram. Linda looked at those photos and saw 4 bedrooms sitting mostly empty, and she thought of Derek's family packed into their 2-bedroom apartment with 4 kids climbing the walls. She brought it up to Douglas that same night. She said, "He has all that space. Derek's drowning. You think Marcus would let them stay there for a while?" Douglas said, "He's family. Of course he will." They drove to Pearland on a Saturday afternoon without calling ahead. Just showed up. Marcus answered the door and his face said everything his voice did not. He looked at them the way you look at a bill you thought you'd paid. Flat, composed, controlled. Mom, Dad. 2 words. The warmth of a brick wall. Linda walked past him into the living room before he could say anything. Douglas followed. Marcus stood at the door with his hand still on the knob, watching them settle into his space like they'd been there before, like they had any right to be. Douglas got straight to it. He told Marcus that Derek was struggling. 4 kids, tiny apartment, Maya at her breaking point. Marcus had 4 bedrooms. It only made sense. Marcus said no. Linda's eyes filled immediately. She has always been good at that, not manipulatively, exactly. But the tears come fast when things don't go the way she expected. She said, "He's your brother, Marcus. He needs help." And Marcus said no again. Clean and flat, not angry, not emotional. Douglas felt his jaw tighten. He looked around the house, the clean lines, the good furniture, the quiet, and felt something he would later identify as resentment. Not at himself. At Marcus. For having more than Derek. For not sharing. For making this difficult. You have all this space and your brother's family is... Get out. Not loud, not dramatic, just final. They left. Linda cried the whole drive home on I-45. Douglas gripped the steering wheel and told himself Marcus would come around, that he just needed time, that family was family. What he did not know, what he was too sealed in his own certainty to consider, was that Marcus had already known about the affair for 2 months, and he had been very, very quietly preparing. A week later, Douglas called Gavin. No, let me get the names right, he called Derek and told him to come to Marcus's house. Bring Maya. Bring the kids. If Marcus saw those little faces ages 2 through 9, maybe his heart would soften. Derek hesitated. Said things between him and Marcus were weird lately. Douglas said it didn't matter, that Marcus would come around when he saw how much help they needed. They all showed up Sunday afternoon. Douglas and Linda, Derek and Maya, 4 kids in tow. Marcus answered the door and looked at the assembled group the way a man looks at a check he knows is going to bounce. He stepped aside and let them in. Simone was in the kitchen. She appeared in the doorway and her face, Douglas noticed this even then, went the color of old ash. She would not look at anyone directly, kept her eyes on the floor tiles. Derek scanned the house with that particular ease he always had when he thought he was winning. "Bro," he said, gesturing around at the living room, the high ceilings, the backyard visible through the glass doors. "This is incredible. Just you and Simone rattling around in here? We are living on top of each other, man. 4 kids and 2 bedrooms. Marcus looked at Derek, then at Simone, then at Derek again. "I know," he said quietly. Something about the way he said it stopped the room. Derek laughed a little nervously. "Know what? That you've been sleeping with my wife." The baby started crying. Maya's hand flew to her mouth. Linda made a sound like something had been knocked out of her chest. Derek started to say something. "Marcus, what are you?" Marcus pulled out his phone. He turned it toward the room. Security camera footage from inside the house. Living room, Derek and Simone. Then the hallway. Then the footage from the bedroom. Explicit. Unmistakable. Long enough that no one in the room could misread what they were seeing. Maya grabbed the 2 older kids and walked straight out the front door. They heard her car start. She did not come back. Derek had gone white as drywall. "Marcus, I can explain." "Don't." 1 word, cold as concrete. Marcus looked at his parents. His expression didn't accuse. It just waited, like he already knew what they were going to say and he just wanted them to say it on the record. You knew, he said. Not a question. Linda couldn't speak. Douglas made himself hold his son's gaze. Gavin Derrick told us it was over. We thought. Marcus laughed. It was the most unsettling sound Douglas had ever heard from his own child. Quiet. Empty. Like air leaving a tire. He told you it was over, Marcus repeated. He lowered the phone. Okay. Well, this changes the conversation a little. And this is the moment I keep coming back to, because this is where Douglas could have grabbed Linda's arm, grabbed Derrick, and walked out of that house with whatever shred of dignity the family still had. He could have said nothing. He could have just left. Instead, Douglas looked at his son who had just watched his marriage collapse in his own living room, and said, "That's between you and your wife. But Derrick still needs somewhere to live. You're still letting him move in." The silence that followed was the loudest thing I have ever read in a stranger's confession. Marcus stared at his father for a long time, then at his mother, then back at his father. His voice, when it came, was almost a whisper. "Let me make sure I understand what you just said to me." He turned to Derrick, who was pressing himself against the wall like he wanted the drywall to absorb him. "You slept with my wife. In my house. For 7 months. Derrick didn't answer. Couldn't. He turned to Linda. "You knew for 3 months and said nothing." Linda's face was streaming. She nodded, once. He turned to Douglas. "And you knowing all of that just told me it doesn't matter, and I should still let him move in. We're not twisting. I've been recording this conversation," Marcus said. "Both visits. Every word." Linda whispered. "You're bluffing." Marcus pressed play. Their own voices filled the room. Douglas's voice, calm and matter-of-fact. Derrick struggling. "He needs somewhere to stay. You've got the space." Linda's voice, warm and maternal. "Blood is blood, Marcus. Family helps family." Douglas's voice again, after the affair revelation. "That's between you and your wife. He still needs a place." He stopped it. "I've got 40 minutes. Doorbell camera, interior mics, both visits. Time stamped." Douglas felt the floor tilt. "Here is what's going to happen," Marcus said. He was so calm, it was almost gentle. "You are going to walk out that door. You are never going to contact me again. If you do, every second of this goes online. Facebook, your church group, the neighborhood association, everyone who knows your name in this city. And if you don't leave right now, I am calling the police for trespassing." Linda stepped toward him. "We are your parents. Marcus, you have 10 seconds. Douglas did not move. He would be honest about this later in his confession. He did not move because some part of him still believed Marcus was performing. Still believed the boy who packed his room without arguing at 19 would fold again now. "Try me," Marcus said. And he was already dialing. "Yes, I need police at this address. My parents and my brother are on my property and refusing to leave after I've asked them to go." The dispatcher's voice was immediate and professional. Douglas's heart stopped. Gavin Derrick was already at the door, practically running. Simone was crying silently in the corner, mascara tracking down her face in 2 straight lines. Linda grabbed Douglas's arm. "We need to go." He still didn't move. "Officers are 4 minutes out," Marcus said. He had the phone angled so they could see the active call on the screen. "You can wait or you can leave. Either way works for me." They left. Stumbled out onto the front lawn in the afternoon light, the kind of thick Houston afternoon where the air sits on you like a wet blanket. A neighbor from across the street was in her driveway. An older couple was walking a dog. They all stopped. They all looked. Linda collapsed onto the grass. She was sobbing so hard she couldn't catch her breath. "Marcus, please, we are so sorry. We didn't mean." Marcus stood in his doorway, arms crossed, face completely still, not angry, not satisfied, just done. He looked at them the way you look at strangers having a bad day on the street, with a kind of distant, detached recognition that this was happening, but that it had nothing to do with him anymore. Then he went inside. The door closed. The lock clicked. In the distance, sirens. Douglas pulled Linda to her feet, and they ran to the car. He doesn't remember the drive home. Just Linda crying beside him and his own hands white on the wheel, and the thought he couldn't stop cycling through his head. He was bluffing. He was bluffing. He would call. He would come around. He was not bluffing. He did not call. He did not come around. The divorce papers were served to Simone at her office on Monday morning, in front of her entire team. Derrick called Douglas that afternoon, barely coherent. He said Marcus hadn't just filed for divorce. He'd sent the videos, the full recordings, to Simone's parents, her sister, her brother, her aunts. Simone's family was deeply religious. Her father was a deacon. Her mother organized women's ministry events at their church. Her father called her things Douglas wouldn't repeat in writing. Her mother didn't call at all. Her brother sent a single text and then blocked her number. She was at a motel by Tuesday. She had no one. Maya got the videos too. Filed for divorce the same week. Took the kids to her mother's place in Beaumont. Retained a lawyer. Derek lost his apartment within the month. He was on Douglas and Linda's couch by the end of October. And then because Marcus was precise even in this, the recordings went online. Linda had written him a 6-page letter. Handwritten, front and back, mailed to the Pearland address. 2 weeks later, Douglas was scrolling through Facebook and there it was. A photo of all 6 pages, letter, perfect, legible, posted to Marcus's public profile. The caption read, "When enablers finally face consequences. 800 shares by morning. Their church found out. Their extended family found out. Linda's sister called and couldn't finish her sentences." Douglas's brother sent a text that just said, "I don't know who you are anymore." Sister Evangeline, who had known them for 16 years, walked past Linda in the church parking lot without making eye contact. Their pastor called Douglas in privately and said, gently but clearly, that it might be best if they stopped back from their ministries for a season while things settled. Douglas sat in his car afterward and stared through the windshield at the church building he had attended for 20 years and felt, for the first time, the true weight of what they had done. Not because of the public shame, not because of the lost friendships, but because every person who had read those recordings and turned away from them was responding to the truth. And the truth was that they had looked their son in the face after watching his marriage fall apart in real time and told him it wasn't their problem. He had nothing to say in his defense. There was nothing to say. They drove to Pearland one more time 3 weeks later early morning. A police cruiser was parked on the street. 2 officers on the sidewalk. One of them stepped forward as they pulled up and told them to turn around. Restraining order. Filed 2 days prior. 500 feet. If they came closer, they would be arrested. Douglas looked past the officers. Marcus was standing in his open front door in a suit, coffee in hand, watching them from the distance the law now required. Linda called his name through the car window. "Marcus, please. We just want to talk. Please." He did not move. Did not respond. Just stood there and watched them be turned away from his house, his driveway, his life. Then he went inside and drove to work. 6 months later, Linda saw him downtown. She'd gone for coffee near the Galleria, and he was coming out of an office building across the street in a hard hat and a lanyard, laughing at something on his phone. She crossed without thinking, just walked toward him. He turned and saw her, and for one moment neither of them moved. She crossed to him, said his name, said she knew she didn't deserve it, said she was sorry, said he was her son. He looked at her for a long time before he spoke. "I was your son when you put me on a stranger's couch at 19 and told me I'd figure it out. I was your son when you paid Derek's rent for a decade and never once asked if I was okay. I was your son when you hid his affair from me for 3 months and then stood in my house and told me to let him move in anyway." His voice did not waver, did not rise. "You made your choice. You made it over and over for 13 years. I've just finally made mine." She reached for his arm. He stepped back. "Don't. We love you." "I know you do," Marcus said. And there was something in the way he said it that was worse than anger. There was understanding in it. Sad, settled, finished understanding. That was never the problem. He turned and walked back toward his building. Linda stood on the sidewalk while strangers moved around her and watched her son disappear into the crowd and never look back. If you have ever stood somewhere and understood in a single moment that you have run out of chances not because time ended but because you used them all up making the wrong choices, then you know exactly what Linda felt standing on that sidewalk. It is a very specific grief, not loud, not dramatic, just the slow recognition that a door has closed and you are on the outside of it and the lock is not yours to turn. Douglas wrote the confession a year after that. He and Linda are still in the house in Pasadena where they raised their boys. Derek lives with them. He is 31 now, working part-time, seeing his kids every other weekend under supervised visitation because Maya's lawyer made a compelling case about his judgment and character. He spends most evenings on the couch. Sometimes he says it quietly, almost to himself, "If Marcus had just forgiven me, I'd still have my family." One night Douglas looked at his younger son and said, "If you hadn't done what you did, you'd still have your family." Derek didn't speak to him for 4 days. Marcus, by the last account Douglas had, is engaged. Her name is Faye. She teaches middle school science. There are photos on Instagram, shared by cousins who still follow him hiking trails near Austin, a birthday dinner with friends, a kitchen full of people laughing. "He looks," Douglas wrote, like a man who has put down something very heavy and is finally learning to use his hands again. They will not be at the wedding. They were not invited. Douglas says they don't deserve to be. He says it plainly, without self-pity, which is the only truly honest sentence I think he's written in his life. Here's what this story taught me. Quiet people are not weak people. They are people who have decided, for reasons you may never fully understand, that their peace is worth more than your drama. The mistake Douglas and Linda made, the mistake a lot of families make, is confusing someone's patience for permission. Marcus never gave them permission. He was just waiting until he had everything he needed. And when that moment came, he did not blow up. He did not beg. He just opened a door and let the consequences walk in. The mistake most people make when they play favorites is thinking the overlooked child won't notice. They always notice. They just learn early that noticing out loud costs more than it returns. So, they go quiet. They go internal. They build in private. And they remember everything. If you have someone in your life who is always the one who figures it out, who is always the one who understands, who is always the one who accommodates, stop. Call them. Not to ask for anything. Just to ask how they're doing and mean it. Because the one who never asks for help is often the one who needed it most and learned the hard way not to expect it. The one action I'd ask you to take today, think of one person in your life you've asked to be strong on your behalf and never thanked. Send them a message. It won't fix everything, but it's a start. And the question I want you to sit with, if you had been in Marcus's position, if the people who were supposed to protect you had spent 2 decades choosing someone else and then shown up asking for more, what would you have done? Where is your line? Do you know? I'd genuinely love to know your thoughts on this one. Drop a 1 inch the comments if you think Marcus handled this exactly right. Drop a 2 if you think he went too far with posting the recordings and sending the videos. Drop a 3 if you think, despite everything, the parents deserve another chance. I read every single comment, and I want to hear where you land on this. Also, where in the world are you watching from right now? What time is it there? I am always amazed at how far these stories travel. Have you ever been the Marcus in your family? The one who was expected to absorb everything and ask for nothing? Tell me in the comments, you are not alone. If this story meant something to you, please share it with someone who needs to hear it. And if you haven't subscribed yet, I hope you will. There are more stories like this one coming, stories about real people navigating impossible situations, and I think you'll want to be here for them. This is a fictional story inspired by real emotional experiences. Fully rewritten and reimagined in Houston, Texas to create original content. Any resemblance to real people or events is entirely coincidental.